Abercrombie & Fitch was one of the most popular clothing stores in the world in the early 2000s. However, after a couple of harsh offensive remarks from the CEO and an economic downturn, the company almost went bankrupt. Despite this, they have somehow been able to fend off bankruptcy and rise once again. So how was Abercrombie & Fitch able to make this rapid transition? Make sure to stick around till the end to find out. Welcome to Hardy's Hobbies. David T. Abercrombie established the first store in 1892. It was originally a hunting and fishing store and it was called David T. Abercrombie & Company. Ezra Fitch, a successful lawyer, bought a portion of the company in 1900 and then it was later renamed Abercrombie & Fitch in 1904. They saw great success early on and eventually both of them retired, with Abercrombie retiring in 1907. Fitch, on the other hand, stayed till 1928 when he sold it to his brother-in-law, James S. Cobb. Under Cobb's leadership, Abercrombie & Fitch acquired several successful companies, and by 1929 they were getting over $6 million in revenue every single year and over $500,000 in net profit. They took a significant hit during the Great Depression, but nothing more than any other company. But they were able to recover very well, and by 1939, they were the greatest sporting goods store in the world. They had very high-profile customers like Ernest Hemingway and Teddy Roosevelt. The company was more focused on the quality of their products versus the cost that they can offer it at, and throughout the 1950s, they completely remodeled their stores. They added heads of buffalo, moose, elk, and other big game. In the early 1960s, the revenue was still increasing, but their net profit was actually declining. John H. Ewing, the president at this time, paid very little attention to this and stated that they would always have their special niche to thrive in. But by the late 1960s, they had to resort to warehouse sales in desperation. The revenue was declining and the net profit was about negative $500,000 a year. Humphreys came as the next president and completely changed the focus of the company. He improved credit practices and inventory management and cut expenses. He remodeled stores, drawing more attention to cheaper products, but these efforts really did not help their sales. In the year of 1975, they had a net profit of negative $1 million, and Abercrombie & Fitch later filed for bankruptcy in August of 1976 and completely closed their doors at the beginning of 1977. But this was clearly not the end of the story. Oshman invested $1.5 million into the company and revived it in 1978. He opened up a couple of stores and sold a hodgepodge of items, but he really struggled to develop an identity for the company. He received a lot of criticism that he should just let the company die, but he continued nonetheless. In 1988, Limited Brands, who had previously been successful at popularizing Victoria's Secret and Express, acquired Abercrombie & Fitch for $47 million. And in 1992, the infamous Mike Jeffries would be appointed as president, who would eventually become CEO and chairman. Sally Frame-Kazakh introduced the company to a strong emphasis on apparel. And together, Michael and Sally really popularized the brand among teens as the sports part of the company was dying out. Michael says that he targeted the teen market because it was growing at record rates and he thought that this could really financially help the company. And he was right, as they grew rapidly, building dozens of stores across the US during the mid-1990s. They went public in 1996, and by the late 1990s, they were building stores that ranged from 8,000 to 20,000 square feet. In 1998, he introduced Abercrombie, which targeted ages 7 through 14. In 1999, they faced a 3-year class action lawsuit. They were just one of several American apparel companies that are accused of using sweatshops. Sweatshops are simply just clothing factories where the workers are paid really low wages. But despite these issues, Abercrombie & Fitch was entering into its golden years as they made over $1 billion in revenue in 1999. By the end of the 1990s, they had over 212 stores nationwide, and in each of these stores, they were making over $400 per square foot. In the early 2000s, Abercrombie & Fitch was the 6th most popular brand among teenagers, even before Levi's and Nintendo. Abercrombie & Fitch started a new brand, Hollister Co., in July of 2000. It was based on Southern Californian surf lifestyle and it was targeted at high school students. Hollister was so successful that it actually started to eat into the revenue of Abercrombie & Fitch. As a result, Mike Jeffries decided to turn Abercrombie & Fitch into a luxury brand, and he started using higher grade materials in the clothing. He also increased prices and bought the trademark casual luxury. He also used heavy promotions that uplifted the image of Abercrombie & Fitch into a near luxury brand. Soon enough, he introduced another brand called Rule No. 925 for older consumers. This was established in September of 2004 and was targeted at the age group 22 to 35. Revenue continued to increase and they opened their first flagship store in 2005. In 2006, they started Canadian expansion, opening 2 Abercrombie & Fitch and 3 Hollister stores in Toronto and Edmonton. They also opened a West Coast flagship store in The Grove. Their revenue continued to skyrocket, reaching $3.318 billion in 2006, which is $1.5 billion more than the year before that. In March of 2007, they opened their first flagship store in Europe and in London. To this day, this is one of their most profitable locations, and in just the first 6 hours of operation, they made $280,000 in revenue. In 2007, they reached their record revenue of $3.749 billion, but this was the start of their second demise. Throughout the 2008 economic recession, Mike Jeffries refused to lower price points or offer sales. He stated that this was in an effort to protect the brand image, and by offering sales and discounts, this would tarnish the brand image as a luxury brand. This led to the first fall in recent history of revenue to $3.54 billion. In 2009, they struggled more financially, and they had to fire 50 employees in January and 170 more employees in May. In June of 2009, they announced the closing of Rule No. 925 by 2010. Despite these financial struggles, they continued to open flagship stores across the globe. They opened a flagship store in Milan in October of 2009 and a flagship store in Tokyo in December. This was the first Abercrombie & Fitch store in Asia, and it was the biggest retail moment in history. On the very first day, this store alone created $550,000 in revenue. In the start of 2010, they launched A&F Cares, which highlighted their philanthropic efforts. More stores continued to close, with 60 in 2010 and 50 more in 2011. But closing all of these stores and reducing the footprint was actually helping the profits of Abercrombie & Fitch, and by September of 2010, their profits were actually increasing. They were the first out of all of their competitors to recover from the economic recession. They continued to open flagship stores in Europe, with Copenhagen in November of 2010 and Paris in May of 2011. At this point, they were continuing to expand globally while shrinking their US footprint. In February of 2011, they announced they would close 180 more US stores by 2015. They had suffered from the economic recession just like all the other companies during that time period, but by reducing their footprint, they were actually recovering very well. They were actually financially profitable. But all of this would change in 2013. Mike Jeffries was very smart in growing brand image, and he believed that brand image was king in the apparel industry in terms of long-term growth. It's very ironic that he himself would kill the brand image with a couple of nasty remarks. In May of 2013, he pretty much proclaimed that people who were not skinny did not belong in Abercrombie & Fitch stores. This clearly caused an outrage within the public and helped surface 2006 remarks as well, where he said that Abercrombie & Fitch was only for cool kids and that people who did not look good did not belong at the stores. This remark largely went unnoticed in 2006, but right now it was making headlines. This also helped bad treatment of the staff members to also surface. This resulted in an explosive backlash from employees and consumers of scales never seen before, and this was definitely a historic moment in the retail industry. At this point, the value of Abercrombie & Fitch was directly associated with the remarks of the CEO. As Mike Jeffries had pointed out for several decades, brand image was pretty much everything in this industry. But now, he had tarnished it himself, and he had no choice but to leave due to significant disapproval in 2014. But despite him leaving, his controversial words led to a global fallout for the company. And this turned Abercrombie & Fitch into one of the most hated retail stores for the next couple of years. They abandoned the attractive sales clerk only policy in 2015 and removed shirtless models from their stores. They started to phase out logos and got a new creative director in the summer of 2015. Their fall apparel was completely unrecognizable with their usual styles, and they offered all sizes. They invested in profitable stores, closed unprofitable stores, and improved product assortment. They were trying very hard to change the perception of their brand by using new marketing. They got rid of their dark shutters, and all of these improvements seem to be helping the social image of the company. In a recent survey of US adults over the age of 18, most of them have a better image of Abercrombie & Fitch in November of 2018 as compared to 2016. Abercrombie & Fitch consumer impression scores went from -4 in 2016 to +3 in November of 2018. Abercrombie & Fitch had also changed their target demographic from teenagers to people aged 18 to 24. They were moving away from old store styles, completely redesigning them, or completely opening new stores altogether. And the last quarter of 2018 was the 5th consecutive quarter of increasing same-store sales. In 2018, Business Insider crowned Abercrombie & Fitch as the biggest retail comeback of the year. Abercrombie & Fitch isn't done just yet. Abercrombie & Fitch started as a hunting and fishing company that absolutely dominated the market during the first half of the 1900s. The company took a sharp downturn right after the 1950s, even filing for bankruptcy in the 1970s. Mike Jeffries, while controversial, led the company in a completely new direction, branding its clothing as cool and fashionable, under which Abercrombie & Fitch had its best years. But some remarks along with poor staff treatment completely destroyed the image of the company, and A&F had to go through complete rebranding. But Abercrombie & Fitch was able to fend off bankruptcy once again and are starting to become a popular clothing brand again. This company has fought off 2 devastating lows during its lifetime, and has one of the most interesting stories of completely changing their product lineup. But will this be their last major problem? Only time will tell. But that's all I have for you guys at Abercrombie & Fitch. Make sure to comment down below what company you would like me to cover next. Also, if you guys like this video, then make sure to drop a like and consider subscribing if you'd like to see more videos just like this one. But until then, I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys on the next one.